Good morning. Happy Friday, right? Yeah. Forget what day it is. Happy Friday. We're live from the dock today. Thought it would be nice to change things up a little bit, but I do have my headphones in just because there's a little bit more noise down here, and I want to make sure that you guys can hear me. So if you're watching the replay, thank you so much. Good morning. Happy Friday. Hey, Roxana. You're right on time today, girl. So we've had a lot of boat traffic and like fishing traffic. A lot of people are not working right now, so they're fishing, and it smells like fish down here today. I was not anticipating that, but it's a little fishy smelling. There's a fisherman going by right now. I've had a couple already come by, and they're probably wondering why I'm sitting on the ground on my dock instead of in the chair, and why I'm talking to my phone. But that's fine. Totally fine. I don't really care what they think. So we've made it to Friday. How are you feeling? Are you feeling encouraged? Are you still scared? Are you kind of content with the whole thing? Like, what's the atmosphere like where you are? Because here, unless I leave my house, things feel relatively normal. When I leave my house, that's when I realize that it's not so normal, because there's nobody on the roads, there's no groceries in the grocery store. Yeah, it's just weird. So I'm actually pretty content at the house. So today we are going to be studying Psalm 124. This is the 5th Psalm in our series. And it's a good one. I say that about every one of them, but it's a good one. I'm pretty excited about it. So I guess we're going to go ahead and jump right in. If you have your Bibles, your grocery stores are improving slowly. Ours are not yet. I was just there, I think Wednesday afternoon I went, and it's still pretty bare. I was able to get what I needed, but it didn't look good. Although there's another grocery store, the Ingles, that's like in downtown Greensboro. My neighbor across the street said it's actually pretty good, and they're limiting toilet paper sales to like 2 per family and all of that stuff. So I think it's getting better. There is a large something floating down the lake toward me, and I'm hoping it's not something dead. I'm hoping it's a tree. I think it's a tree. Part of a tree. There's a dude paddleboarding over there. Just all kinds of stuff going on this morning. Okay. So we're gonna I'm so distracted, and I'm sorry. I had a bad feeling that this was going to be the case. And I prayed before I came down here. I was like, please alleviate distractions, Lord, but they're everywhere down here. Anyway, may not be such a great idea to do this from the dock. So let's study Psalm 124 today, okay? And I'll pretend that I don't see all the paddleboarder people and fishermen. And so we're going to study Psalm 124. If you have your Bible, open it around the middle, and let's go to Psalm 124 together. I'm going to be reading from the CSB, and then we're going to talk about it. So here we go. A song of ascents of David. If the Lord had not been on our side, let Israel say, if the Lord had not been on our side when people attacked us, then they would have swallowed us alive in their burning anger against us. Then the water would have engulfed us, the torrent would have swept over us, the raging water would have swept over us. Blessed be the Lord, who has not let us be ripped apart by their teeth. We have escaped like a bird from the hunter's net. The net is torn, and we have escaped. Our help is in the name of the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. So those last 2 lines sound very familiar, I'm sure. So let's talk about this one. This is the second one from David. The first one was Psalm 122, and this one is from David as well. And it's a praise after the suffering has been completed for God's mercy. So we're going to take this, kind of sections at a time and just talk about it. So the first 2 verses, there's repetition there. It says, if the Lord had not been on our side, let Israel say, if the Lord had not been on our side when people attacked us. So he says that twice. Something interesting that I found in my studying for this was that the Hebrew term for had been on our side, it's a word I can't pronounce in Hebrew, but it's the past tense of Emmanuel, which means God with us. So it's the past tense of God with us, so God was with us, basically. He had been with us, had been on our side. I thought that was pretty interesting. There's a great quote by Martin Luther that I read this morning when I was studying for this, and I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to read it twice because it's Old English, so it takes a second. This repetition is not in vain, for whilst we are in danger, our fear is without measure, but when it is once past, we imagine it to have been less than it was indeed. And this is the delusion of Satan, to diminish and obscure the grace of God. So I'm going to read that one more time. This repetition is not in vain, for whilst we are in danger, our fear is without measure. But when it is once past, we imagine it to have been less than it was indeed. And this is the delusion of Satan, to diminish and obscure the grace of God. I think that's really powerful for us to remember that while we're sitting in something scary, while we're sitting in this COVID crisis, this pandemic, it's very scary. It's very scary because we can't see the end of it. We don't know how things are going to come out at the end. So it's really scary, and most of that is the unknown. But that's the enemy. The enemy is making us afraid. But once we're on the other side of this scary thing, we can look back on it and go, you know what, that wasn't so bad. That wasn't as scary as it should have been. And God had mercy, and He brought us out of it. And I love that, and I think that's very appropriate for what we're dealing with right now. So let's look at verses 3 through 5, where David talks about what the enemy would have done had God not been merciful. He talks about how they would have swallowed us alive in their burning anger. The water would have engulfed us. The water. Pretty appropriate that we're down at the dock today. The water would have engulfed us and swept over us, and the raging water would have swept over us. Something to note is that the Israelites were constantly being attacked by their enemies. People did not like the Israelites. And David, who authored this psalm, he was a great warrior. You remember David and Goliath, right? David defeated this giant with just a stone, and he became Saul's #1 soldier before Saul got jealous of him and then tried to kill him. But David was a great warrior. And basically David is writing this saying, it's not me who defeated our enemies. It's all God. Nothing that I did or could have done would have made any difference had God not been on our side. And that's very powerful coming from a king. And, you know, David had favor from God. God loved David very, very much. And He gave him a lot of victory. And so that's just really important for us to note as we read this, that, you know, if God is on our side, it doesn't matter what we are capable of or how weak we are. It doesn't matter. Our own strengths and weaknesses don't matter, because if God is on our side, He will deliver us. There's other translations of verse 5. Mine, it says the raging water would have swept over us, but there's other translations that says the water would have gone over our soul. I kind of like that better, because it shows that these were not just physical attacks on the people and the land. These were attacks on their souls, on their spirit, on their heart. These were attacks to try to get them to turn away from their belief in God. And that's what the enemy does, right? He wants us to doubt God. He wants us to turn away from God and just accept defeat. And so we are under attack for our souls, but God is bigger. The wind is blowing my pages. You'll have to bear with me. So then we go into the last 3 verses, and this is a blessing and a prayer. It's kind of a praise where it says, "Blessed be the Lord who has not let us be ripped apart by their teeth. We've escaped like a bird from the hunter's net. The net is torn, and we have escaped. Our help is in the name of the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth." So this shifts from past tense, where he was saying the Lord had been on our side, right, to present tense saying our help is in the name of the Lord. So it's God was with us, and He is with us. And we can add on to that and say He will continue to be with us, right? You'll probably notice the verse 8, our help is in the name of the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. If you flip back over to Psalm 121, verse 2, it says, "My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth." And David did not write Psalm 121, but again, we're seeing where we need to look for our help, where we need to look for our salvation, where we need to look for our protection and our provision during these times of fear. Roxana says, mine says, "Then seething water would have drowned us." Seething water. Ooh. So a big takeaway from this today that I got out of that is that history creates confidence. And I think that's really important for us. So knowing what God has done for us in the past and how he has delivered us gives us confidence to go ahead into the future, not knowing what that looks like, but having the confidence that if God delivered us in the past, he's going to deliver us again. If God was with us back then, he's with us right now, and he's going to continue to be with us. So we will have the confidence to know that he will do it again. And that's really powerful. So something that I want you to do today, I know every day I tell you, I want you to study this on your own. I want you to write out the psalm. Again, this is a short one. It's 8 verses. It's very short. But something else that I would love for you to take the time to do today. Good morning, y'all who are just joining. Please go back and watch the replay because we just read Psalm 124 and talked about it, and there's some really great nuggets in there. So something that I want you to do today that's a little bit different is I want you to journal about a time when you felt very afraid in the moment. Something that you were sitting in, some crisis or something in your life that you were dealing with where you were very afraid. And then once it was over, you can look back on it and see how God delivered you through that and how it wasn't as scary as you thought it should have been. And just thank him for that. Take time today to thank him for that. And then just sit in that for a minute and realize that while we are sitting in a time of unknowns right now, we don't know what the end of this crisis, this COVID crisis, is going to look like. We have no idea. And that's scary. But we know what God's done for us in the past. So we can rest in that assurance that he delivered us from other things that were really hard and really scary, and he's going to deliver us through this too. I think it's really appropriate that in my own personal Facebook today, in my Facebook memories, 8 years ago today, I went to my last meeting before a judge with my ex-husband, fighting for custody of my daughter. And I posted on Facebook 8 years ago today that 622 days had passed since the first time we went before the judge. 622 days we sat in this awful, scary, unknown time where we didn't know what the future would hold, and we're waiting on the judge to decide what he's going to do with our daughter. And that was really scary. But I can look back on that now 8 years later, and I can see all of the goodness of God from that. I can see how he kept me strong and sane and just held me and held my daughter. And that's what this is talking about. I'm not going to cry. I've done so good. Okay. I knew I'd cry when I talked about that. But so again, Psalm 124 talks about the goodness of God, and it's just reflecting on how the Lord had been on our side in the past, and he will continue to be. So take time today to think about a time in your life that was hard and that was scary and where God delivered you from that, and thank him for that. And then put that into practice today, and just know that if he delivered us before, he will do it again. He will do it again. God is on our side. So thank you guys so much for joining me. Very fortunate that it's been pretty distraction free since I started talking. There's no fishermen going by or whatever. It's really beautiful out here today. As long as the weather is nice, we'll continue to come dockside and do these. That was Psalm 124. I appreciate you guys joining me. If you missed any of that, please go back and watch the replay. I do edit these down to under 10 minutes to put on IGTV, but the full episode will be on YouTube and my blog later today. So anyway, we'll do this again tomorrow, 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern. Hopefully dockside. Maybe the weather will continue to be nice. I hope you guys have a fantastic Friday, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.